All right, so today we're talking about Route 66, which was 1960 to 64, I think.
Yep. Yep.
Um, yeah, so take it away, Michael.
Well, Route 66 was a unique show in every kind of way. One way, and the basic way, the way to let them get away with what they got away with, is the production company owned the show, not the network CBS that broadcast it. So they didn't have to deal with the network executives about what they were doing. Sterling Silliphant, who had the basic idea, and his producers, Herbert B. Leonard, and he had Howard Rodman as story editor. So basically, Howard Rodman was editing Silliphant's scripts, and Howard Rodman himself was a superb screenwriter. He wrote two or three of them. But it came from the imagination of Sterling Silliphant. And they were in control of what they were doing. So they did something completely unheard of and extraordinary and has never been done since. They filmed Route 66 all over the country. Sociologically, this I think this is an important aside. This is an aside, but it's important. They did not film this except for a few that were filmed around Los Angeles. They didn't film this in studios. If you're seeing a hotel room, that's the hotel room. If you're seeing an apartment, that's an apartment in that neighborhood. If you're seeing a street, that's the street. Everything is shot as is in many towns from Maine to California, from Key West all the way up to the Canada border. For 4 years, they would go around the country. And Howard Rodman told me this himself. And Sterling would go to a town with whatever entourage he had, probably a couple of secretaries, people that assist him in this and that. And he would kind of absorb the town. And he would write a script, send it back. They'd Howard Rodman would fuss with it, and people would make it cohere. And he'd be doing this on deadlines. They're doing like 25 of them, even one season. I think they did 30 of them. The basic crew would come to the town. They'd pick locations. They would use townspeople as extras, even with speaking parts. The cops you see are, except for if a cop has a kind of a major part, they bring in actors. But the people you see in the stores and all this stuff, they're the people. You're seeing the United States as it was from the fall of 1960 to the spring of 1964. And you're seeing the faces. You're seeing the prices on the gas stations. You're seeing the clothing. It's white. It's almost all white. They did one episode with a black cast called Goodnight Sweet Blues with Ethel Waters, great Ethel Waters, singer and actress. I think she won an Emmy for it. And so there's that. And I don't think, Sterling wrote, there was something like 117 episodes. Sterling wrote something like 100 of them. I know it's amazing to think of. These were 50-minute scripts, not 40-minute scripts like they are today. These are 50-minute scripts. And I don't know, as a writer myself, I do not know how Sterling could keep that up for 4 years. In one sense, it exhausted him because though he did write the script for In the Heat of the Night, and the script won an Academy Award, basically, you know, the other things he wrote after that were The Towering Inferno. He never wrote on the level of Route 66 again. Route 66 was a thing in itself, was not something that was going to lead to other things. This also was true of the actors. But I don't want to get sidetracked. So the sociological importance of Route 66, I don't know if anybody's really discovered that. That if you want to see the United States as it was 60 years ago, Route 66 will show it to you. Definitely from a white point of view, definitely from a male point of view, but Route 66 will show it to you. All over. Now, with all the traveling I've done by road, I look at these old episodes, and every once in a while I just go on a Route 66 kick. And now I've been to most of these places, and they don't look like that anymore. And it's valuable to have this record of how things looked 60 years ago. The writer James Agee said when he was writing film reviews in the 1940s, if we had 100 feet of film shot 2,500 years ago on a Roman street, it would be priceless. Well, we have that in spades with all the TV production, but we rarely in TV production or film production do you really have the rooms, the clothing, etc., so precisely as you have in Route 66. So there's that. The other thing was the premise. These two guys, these friends, one, a New York street kid who was raised in an orphanage, the other, a college graduate who had money when he was young. That's why it's a Corvette that they're riding. But business went bad. When his father died, the only thing left was the Corvette. And these two guys, we don't really know how they meet. We meet in the first episode. It's called Black November, I think, or Black December. And they give you the premise. And I've got, of course, a Route 66 file. And so I'm going to it. And sorry for the silence, but Black November, 1960, with a great cast: Everett Sloan, Keir Dullea, Patty McCormick, George Kennedy. George Kennedy would be a future Academy Award winner. Keir Dullea would be a featured actor in art films. Patty McCormick was an excellent, maybe she won an Academy Award too, I can't remember.
Keir Dullea was in 2001, right?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And George Maharis played Buzz. Martin Milner played Todd. And George Maharis is asked what he's looking for. And he says, looking? Who's looking? Like I say, you live it the way you feel it. When it moves, you go with it. Todd says, I got unrest. So what's wrong with unrest? It's as good as anything. Besides, we're all stuck with it. You got it. I've been looking ever since I can remember. So I say, if we keep moving, we'll find a place to plant roots and stick. Or it's fine just moving. And this was a paradigm that I'd never heard of, except Jack Kerouac's On the Road, but they're beatniks. They're concerned with that. These guys are not beatniks. I mean, sometimes George Maharis talks like a 1950s jazz musician, but that was the way people talked around New York in a certain class, so I picked that up too. see, he's coming. He's a New York street kid, so I'm identifying with him. But actually, Martin Milner was the better actor. And here was this. Oh, here are these people. These two guys. They're going around the country for what? They're looking. They don't know what they're looking for. I could identify with that. That's what I wanted to do. Because I didn't want to become like any of the grown-ups I knew. I didn't want to become like my father or like my uncles or like my teachers. I wanted to look for something. And so here was the show of these people going around the country just looking, and it was written. Well, let's put it this way. It was written. It wasn't just scripted. There was one episode that Howard Rodman wrote called The Bridge Across 5 Days. And, oh no, it was Mon Petit Chat with Lee Marvin, directed by Sam Peckinpah, and written by Sterling, where Lee Marvin says, "Who says this is a lice? This is an ambush." I'm going, wow. What? Who's saying that on television? And the marvelous Julie Newmar in How Much a Pound is Albatross. So you have this woman who's going all around the country on a motorcycle by herself. And she's saying, isn't there a higher purpose to living than peace of mind? And I'm 16 looking and going, oh my God, talk to me, lady. What are you saying to me? Isn't there a higher purpose to living than peace of mind? And she says, keep nothing in reserve. Let nothing go to waste. Express nothing under disguise. Put all of you into what you feel. When you live each moment like this, you are said to be a golden-maned eagle. Suppose I were to be as honest with you as I could be, fooling you no more than I fool myself. Still, you wouldn't know me, and I wouldn't know you. Because no matter how much we cry for light, we're sleepwalkers fumbling in the dark. Sometimes we manage to touch for a moment, but then we pass. I've given myself to life and let it take me where it will. Man, this was a deep music for me and for a lot of people. Here were these two guys going around the country, lucky enough to have a young writer, youngish, at the top of his form, as good as better than he would ever be again. Just putting his heart and soul into these scripts. And these scripts were not about crime. Very rarely, sometimes, but very rarely, did actual crime enter into this. Did actual adventure enter into this? These guys went from town to town and got jobs. Now, in that period, in the early 1960s, if you were willing to work, you'd get a job. I had a skill, I could type. And in New York, that meant I could get a job, period. Walk into an employment agency, a city employment agency, show them how fast and accurately I can type. They're going to send me to a bunch of offices and I'm going to get a job. If you're willing to work physically in that time and place, you can get a job. And you were a guy, you can get a job. And you're white, you can get a job. In the big cities, anybody can get a job. In New York, when I was working at radio TV, my supervisor was Benny Banks. He was a tall, bald black man from Harlem. He was my boss. That was not unusual, in that time and place. And so these guys were using what was there in America at the time. It was an economy. It wasn't a booming economy. It wasn't a diving economy. Things were pretty steady in the early 60s. And they knew that anywhere they go, they were willing to work, they could find some work. They weren't going to make money. But that's not what they were after. They wanted to keep the car going, and they wanted to go from place to place. There's one place, there's one Phoenix, where it looks like Buzz is going to stay, George Harris is going to stay, with this woman. And Todd tells him, we always knew that someday you'd have to find a new boy to drive you wherever you were going, or I'd have to find a new passenger. If that's not what we were traveling around the country for, then what? So one day, one or both of us would finally alight somewhere. So, one for the road. There's another line in that one that goes, in ways too mysterious to understand, one man's pain becomes another man's pain. One man's laughter becomes another man's laughter. That's a Sterling script. And the people who were in these films, incredible actresses who did their best work, probably their best television work of their lives. Lois, who are not famous. Lois Smith, she was in One a Year. Susan Oliver. Barbara Barry, later won an Academy Award. Tuesday Weld. Cloris Leachman, Veronica Cartwright. Cloris Leachman and Veronica Cartwright won Academy Awards. And Burt Reynolds was in the same one. It's called Love is a Skinny Kid. Tuesday Weld comes to town on a bus wearing a mask. And the big Chinese kind of, or Japanese kind of no mask. And when they wanted to take it off, she says to make them, this crowd of people looking at her, make them take off their masks and I'll take off mine. And this great line, love is a skinny kid that catches cold and dies just standing outside a locked door begging to come in. And life's not a lot of straight lines, little tiny lines that we can't see. It's all caught in a circle, never stopping. You know, there's only one thing a person can do all by themselves without any help, and that's die. When the doctor slaps you and you scream, you're on the scene, baby, you're free. From that moment on, the choice is yours. Well, maybe life isn't that simple, but boy, I really liked hearing that when I was 16 years old. And there's this one called Kiss the Maiden's All Forlorn, when Douglas Fairbanks Jr. was in it. Beatrice Straight, one of the best actresses on Broadway. A young actress named Zena Bethune got a lot of work then. And she's going to become a nun. And her criminal father comes back to try to stop her from becoming a nun. And Beatrice Straight plays the Mother Superior. And she tells the father, God didn't say go be a nun. Christ didn't say go be a nun. He said come follow me. He accepts volunteers only. Wow. And they talk about these nuns, and already in 1961, this was written by Sterling. This is all kind of suspect. I mean, girls becoming nuns, that was really slagging off. And they're described as, I'm quoting, girls who can hope magnificently, against all doubt, against all reason. And the Douglas Fairbanks character, who's a master criminal, gets to say, every criminal acquits himself before he's judged. Every violator considers himself excused by circumstances. Don't you acquit him. Don't you excuse him. And there's one point where somebody says to somebody else, I can't remember which, follow your instincts and keep going. What else is there? And the other person says, isn't that the truth? Man, when I was 17, that was important to hear. That was important. I think it's important to hear now. And here's a line written by Sterling. Martin Milner says it. Most people don't want to be saved. Their greatest ambition is self-destruction. Whew. And here's another one, again written by Sterling. We belong to a species that can protect itself against everything, except each other. And this, if you talking to people who watch Route 66, they will inevitably mention this episode called Ever Ride the Waves in Oklahoma. And if you know this country, you know there ain't no waves in Oklahoma. And so Buzz says, George Harris says, the guys that ride the waves in Oklahoma, the ones that watch the trucks unload in Kansas City, are the guys on Skid Row. Once you say they're people, you have to say, maybe then they're getting ready to make their move in their own way. But if they make it and how they make it, when they make it, win or lose, that's between a man and himself. And Martin Milner gets to say, We have to become lost before we can find ourselves. That sort of map you make up as you go along. Now, this is a TV show on every Friday night. And this is what's coming across. I feel very lucky to have been a high school kid when this stuff had its season. Here's from a script by Larry Marcus, who wrote a few of the good ones, where Miller gets to say, or a child standing silent and alone, as if the joy and fury of being a child had left him for a moment, and the solemnity of being a human being caught him unawares. Wow. And Larry Marcus wrote another one called Where's Chick Gorma Gone? And it ends with, and where Vera Miles plays a stripper down on her luck. They're kind of nice about it, but it's just a stripper down on her luck, kind of a hustler. And she's come to her hometown. And that's from the Sandberg poem, Where is Chick Gorma Gone? Everybody loved Chick Gorma in our town, far off. Now nobody knows where she's gone. Well, this is Chick Gorma coming back to town. And like Thomas Wolfe wrote, you can't go home again. They don't want her. And she says, how'd she put it? She says, onward then, with guts and dignity. And later on, Mona repeats it. Onward, with guts and dignity. After I saw that, I got on a Greyhound bus about 11 o'clock at night in Waterville, Maine, cold, winter, to go spend Christmas vacation in New York City with my people, except it's kind of with and not with my people. My mother was in a welfare hotel on 77th and Broadway when that area was a pretty dangerous place. And it'd be a supported living kind of thing. She'd get a small job, and the city would supplement the rent and stuff. It was small hotel rooms, a radio, no TV. Could be a very depressing place. Could be, if you let it be. My mother didn't let it be. And she'd get me with what money, I do not know. She'd get me, and not that these were expensive, like a closet room there. I mean, literally a room the size of a large closet. Had a bed, had a bathroom, had a little desk, chipped, old, had a radio on the bureau, AM, and a window out on the air shaft. And I repeated that line to her, onward with guts and dignity. And it became her flagship line for the rest of her life. Onward with guts and dignity. Even when she was dying of cancer. And I wanted to give you one more line. Okay, here it is. Sorry for the silence. And again, this was written by Sterling, with Suzanne Pochette in this role. Most people are victims of their own low standards, no matter where you look. Whew. I did not want to be a victim of my own low standards. So there were lessons here. There were situations. You saw terrific performances by, especially by the women, who you never saw again, or you never got this kind of role again. Lois Smith, Lois Nettleton, Julie Newmar, Susan Oliver, Vera Miles, and sometimes a big star. Joan Crawford was in one of them. Buster Keaton was in a lovely one. Boris Karloff and Peter Lorre and Lon Chaney Jr. were in another one, kind of a funny one. It was a show people wanted to be on. James Coburn, Robert Redford, James Caan, all cut their teeth on Route 66 shows in the early 60s, years before they became stars. The women didn't have the same luck. Actually, luck is not the word. They didn't have the same opportunity. Most of them would not get scripts that had the complexity and depth that Sterling was able to write for women. And so I've often wondered, I know that Lois Smith later in life became a major actress in Village, as they used to call it, New York City theater, when she was middle-aged and onward. But that in-between period for her, and then some people didn't get an in-between period, like Susan Oliver, or Lois Nettleton. It is, they did such great work. They showed what they could do, but there wasn't an entertainment industry that could use what they could do, that was willing to use it. Julie Newmar became Catwoman on Batman, but she was capable of a lot more than that. Now, with the kind of production that's going on all over the world, these people could get roles. But that was that. It ran for 4 years, which was a lot at the time. There are famous shows that, for instance, Star Trek. Star Trek only ran for 3 years. Now, some shows like Gunsmoke ran for 20 years, but mostly dramatic shows, Naked City ran for about 4 years. Sterling had a lot to do with that, too. 5 years the first year, or 2, it was a half-hour show. And again, this was a production that used the streets of New York and the people of New York. That's what made it really good, even when it was a half-hour show. Made it worth watching. And now you can see Route 66 on Freevee. You order your TV to go to Freevee. If you have the connection on the internet on TV, or I guess you can do it on your computer, and you can watch. They have some commercials, but they're not very intrusive, and they pass pretty quickly. And we saw Route 66 with commercials, so it was built around. It can handle that form. And I recommend it very highly. I think, along with Twilight Zone and a few others, it's certainly in the top 5 of the shows of its time, and I put it in the top 10 of the shows of any time. Nothing like it's been done before or since. And it made all the difference to me in the sense of it gave me a paradigm. Oh, I don't have to grow up and be normal. I can try to do what these guys are doing and see what happens. And sometimes in my life, the kind of life I've lived, I will pause and say Sterling Silverfoot was right. But I guess I must include, I met Sterling Silverfoot finally when Nick at Night, if you remember, I'm sure you remember it well, put the reruns of Route 66 on TV for the first time in 20 years in 1985. I wrote some pieces about it for LA Weekly. And he found me because I was writing about Route 66. And we met, and Jan and I had lunch with him once. Went to a couple of parties that he threw. And the first thing he said to me was, "Mike, I'm the biggest fool in Hollywood." Like he was proud of it, but he also wasn't proud of it. He was a broken person in a lot of ways. And he moved to Thailand, and I got a call when I was, this is, he died in the early 90s, sometime in that period. I got a call from his then wife, who was Vietnamese, and she said, Sterling is dying. And, you know, in those days, long-distance calls were incredibly expensive. International calls were incredibly expensive and rare. And the reception wasn't too good often. But there was still Western Union, and I said, can I send him a telegram? And she said, yes, his son is there, and you can send him a telegram. And I wrote in this telegram, I can't remember exactly the words, but I wrote that I would not have had the life I've lived, and I would not have become the writer I became if I hadn't had Route 66 in my formative years. And I am told his son read that to him on his deathbed. And my debt to that show is a little embarrassing, and to owe that much to a TV show, but it really made all the difference. I knew that the life around me wasn't the only life, and I didn't need any more goading than that, really. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's really it really is cool how they went to each location and documented those towns at that time, and also they weren't most of them weren't well known towns. They were pretty small towns. I remember one it was up in some mining town in like Nevada or something, and yeah, very strange. I mean, every episode was pretty strange, and and I remember a couple of other episodes that were just really eerie, weird little towns. And it must have been a real experience filming in all these different places and using the locals as well. There must have been a lot of fun experiences doing that. But yeah, it's a
well, even
interesting
the cities they
show.
filmed in, you know,
Yeah.
Pittsburgh,
Yeah,
Cleveland.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not like they went to. I mean, they did 2 or 3 in LA, but they never did one in New York. They did one in Chicago, a couple in Chicago. But you know, how many were filmed in Chicago at that time? And at that time,
Right.
the filming was going on in Los Angeles and New York.
Yeah.
And that's all you saw.
Yeah, they filmed the one in Toronto too. And
That's right, they did.
yeah, and
And they filmed one in northern New Mexico, that little church, Chimayo.
Yeah.
Yeah, tiny little Chimayo. I mean, it's a pinpoint on the map. And now that church has become somewhat has been rebuilt. Some it's kind of a destination.
Really?
Nobody heard of that church back then, except the people in that area. Somehow Sterling found it.
Yeah, that's I mean, I love that. I love like learning the essence of a town, and the only way that I ever see that in media is in true crime shows. That's the only way that you get to know like the real street life of a town anymore. But in a weird way, Route 66 really did that.
Yeah. You know, at the same time, you had that great show Twilight Zone. So you had some stuff on TV that was really different.
Yeah. And Twilight Zone was really a stage for a lot of old actors and good new actors too. It was
Oh yeah.
That was kind of the same in that sense, but yeah, it's interesting how it kind of mirrors the Kennedy presidency too. You know, like it starts with the Kennedy presidency, and then it ends. I think March says March '64, and it's funny because The first episode's called Black November, and then there was an episode called To Kill a or To Kill a King, I think it's called, and it was set to air
I
that
Came to Kill
week.
a King.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was set to air that week, and it's about Robert Loggia is a foreign potentate that's they make an assassination attempt on him. A double of Todd makes an assassination attempt on him, and they decided not to air it. I think it was supposed to air, I think on the 22nd, and then they showed it after the last episode in 1964. But that's really
Right.
weird. That's that's super weird. That
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there.
Especially because there were hardly any crime shows on. Crime wasn't a part of the thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Once in a while they'd run into something.
No, that was a very very different episode for Route 66 too. Yeah, yeah, it's very strange, but yeah, yeah, I like Route 66 a lot, and it's true what you say about it being a document of America in that time. Yeah, the and Silliphant's a very interesting character too, and interesting guy. Naked City's a good show,
Yep.
and yeah, it is pretty amazing how he could just knock out scripts like that.
Well, once I really became a writer, I really I look back and go, "Oh my God, Sterling, how did you
Yeah,
do this?" And I even asked him that, and he really couldn't tell me. You know, it was so in that moment. He was so much that guy who could go do that. And he was never that guy again.
did he have something to do with A Hard Day's Night?
No.
Okay, I'm thinking of somebody else. Um, yeah, and it's funny too how Martin Milner makes this show where he's driving around in a car with another guy, and then he makes Adam 12 where he's just driving around in a car with a guy.
Yep. It's interesting because, when Harris left the show,
Yeah.
you really got to see that Martin Milner was a really good actor.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Milner's
A
great.
really good actor.
Yeah,
And then he does Adam 12.
yeah.
Gets a paycheck for a few years. And the last time I saw him he was in the first Columbo. He was the guy who gets killed in the first Columbo.
That's right. He was on Columbo. Yeah. That's funny.
And he was a writer, I believe, who gets killed. Columbo, you see the crime, and then and you know who did it, and the thing is just how Peter Falk gets him. And that was the very first one. And Martin Milner got killed.
Yeah, I guess me and Mom used to hang out with him on the beach in Del Mar. He'd show up on the beach. Yeah, yeah. When I was a kid.
Huh.
But, yeah, a really nice guy. But yeah, I guess Maharis was gay.
Yeah, and that had something to do with something. I mean, he was also one of these guys. It happens sometimes. Who they think they're going to be a star, and people around them think they're going to be a star, so they quit a TV show.
Yeah.
And he made a couple of nowhere movies. He never made another TV show. I mean, his career just went kaplunk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think it was because he was gay, because there were a bunch of gay actors.
Right.
That,
Yeah.
worked.
I actually, even though Milner had a family and was married and everything, I was always kind of suspicious of Milner, but I don't want to talk about, because he always had a friend with him at the beach, but who knows with those guys? But
Who knows with anybody?
yeah.
who, who knows?
But I liked Link too. I forget the name of that actor that was
Glenn
it.
Corbett.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was good too.
Or Corbett, I don't know how you pronounce it. Yeah, he was
Corbett.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
They did some very good scripts with him because they had to write harder. You know, it had been slacking off a little bit, and they did some really good scripts. There's one with that actor Hickman. He was in Bewitched.
Oh yeah,
The guy
yeah.
he played he's been Link's uh, uh, lieutenant in Vietnam, and it was one of the first times. I mean, Sterling was hip to Vietnam before anybody, you know, in media, and he was a Vietnam veteran in 1964, which tells you something. And they go to visit him, and he's lost his mind, but in a very quiet kind of way, kind of dementia kind of way. It's like visiting a child, and he doesn't have any memories. And I think it was something like the title was, it had the phrase "Our Shining Lieutenant" in it, something like that. Anyway.
Well, all right. I'll let you go. It's a
Okay.
good talk about Route 66.